Hello again. You are watching today on eNCA DSTV channel 403. Now, if approved by the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, Eskom's cost-effective electricity tariffs model may see South Africans paying even more for electricity in the near future. That's right. Currently, Nersa is dealing with the struggling utilities' proposed 38% price increase. 38%. This comes as Eskom sales are also down around 14.7% due to reduced economic activity and the increased blackouts. Now, Professor Mark Swilling from the National Planning Commission and is also the University of Stellenbosch's Center for Sustainable Transitions joins us now this hour on Today. Prof, good afternoon. Welcome to Today, and thank you very much for your time. Just this whole issue of this model that is being considered, this cost-reflective electricity tariffs model. I mean, what's problematic about it, in your view?
Well, everybody will agree that the most problematic aspect of it is the impact it's going to have on daily life, on households, and on businesses. So it's going to have, quite a massive economic impact. That's the biggest problem with it. On the other hand, Eskom is in a financial squeeze, and it has to get funding either from those who buy electricity, or it has to get funding from the government. The government is constrained, and so this is the outcome. This is the consequence.
So this application, though I understand, to Nersa by Eskom for a 38% increase is being considered under the old tariff model, and the impact, of course, of any increase that we get from Eskom annually is hefty in our pockets.
Yeah, it's a massive increase. It's not going to be the last. There's going to be a continuous increase as Eskom tries to overcome the consequences of the past. So it's as we all know, it's basically run out of money in order to buy the diesel that is required to keep the diesel generators going, to make up for the fact that the power generators, the coal-fired power generators, are continuously breaking down because they've suffered from poor maintenance over a long period of time, plus sabotage, plus corruption. So this is a perfect storm of a combination of the continued decline of the old power stations and the damaged power stations on the one hand, the rising inflation, the rising costs of diesel, and the dependence on more and more diesel in order to keep the lights on and prevent us moving into stage 3, permanently into stage 3 or stage 4 load shedding.
Yeah, so users, from what the reports I've seen, users could end up in this new model if it's approved by Nersa, and as you said, it's controversial because of its impact on all of us. I mean, we would see somebody, for example, classified as a home power 1, paying 938 Rand instead of 218 Rand without even using a single kilowatt of electricity.
Yes, I mean, basically what Eskom is doing is shifting away from a model where you pay for electricity plus the costs of the grid in a single tariff. In splitting it, they're saying that if you are connected to the grid, you must pay a basic amount, and irrespective of how much you use. And then on top of that, depending on how much you use, you will then be charged for that. And that is their way of demarcating a flow of funds that is going to accrue to the National Transmission Company of South Africa, which is the unbundled company that is going to take over the management of the grid. So that becomes a standalone business, and tariff reform is in preparation for that unbundling, which is down the road.
So basically, you and I are going to have to pay for the generation part, the distribution part, and the transmission part. That's
correct. And really, this is a consequence of our dependence on a fossil fuel-based, coal-based energy generation system, which is becoming increasingly costly and increasingly inefficient because of the impact of aging power stations, corruption and sabotage, and poor maintenance of the past. And then the inefficiencies and cost overruns for building Medupi and Kusile are now baked into these tariffs, because the money had to be spent, even though it's several times bigger than the original budget.
Yeah, I started our interview by asking you what is problematic about this the proposed cost-reflective electricity tariffs model. I just want to ask now, is there any silver lining to any of this at all? Is there any part of it that is not bad?
Well, it's bad for the economy in the sense that it's going to negatively impact on the financial viability of businesses and households, on the one hand. On the other hand, we all have an interest in Eskom surviving so that it can continue to keep the lights on and to keep the grid going, to keep on generating electricity. And what Eskom is saying is if you want us to do that, we need the necessary income in order to cover our costs like any other business. In the absence of continuous bailouts from the government, the money has to come from somewhere, and they're saying it's going to have to come from the people who use electricity. So if there is a silver lining, it would be this is part of slowly making sure that there is a financially viable energy system. But a financially viable energy system may well have very negative impacts for some households and some businesses, some of whom might go under, because this might push them over the edge after the consequences of the pandemic, and then the inflation, and now massive increases in energy costs.
Yeah, and if they get their 38% increase currently that Nersa is considering, that means by the time the new model starts coming in, the new tariffs model will always be on a higher base. I mean, 38% is big.
38% is big, but just note the wording that Eskom is using. These are cost-reflective tariffs. In other words, Eskom generates electricity, manages an infrastructure, and it costs a certain amount of money. They are heavily indebted at around 400 billion. They have to service that debt until government takes over a portion of that debt, which is what the Minister of Finance said they were thinking of doing, between a third and 2/3. We haven't seen that happen yet. In the meantime, it's Eskom's responsibility. So paying off the debt, paying for maintenance of the infrastructure, and as well as generating electricity. They combine all of that, say this is what it costs us, and we have to have income from somewhere to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, energy is very important for our economic activities and development. And of course, we have the plan, the National Development Plan, that has got so many goals that need to be achieved. But with this current challenges of energy in our country, it looks like it's unlikely the country will hit any of those important targets, largely due to energy crisis.
Yes. Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. None of the development goals in the National Development Plan can be achieved under current conditions in the energy system, because the load shedding is costing us a fortune on a daily basis. We simply cannot talk about development if we don't resolve the energy crisis. Now, we need to see this historically. Historically, especially even back in the early days of our democratic era, cheap electricity and Eskom was seen as a precondition for economic development and growth in the South African economy. Now, Eskom and the energy system is contradicting what is required. in terms of the revenues that they need in order to deal with all their debt, all their maintenance, all their generation, without state support. So now so our energy system becomes an albatross rather than a spur for our economic growth, as it was in the past. And we have to resolve this. And the only way to resolve it is to get off unreliable and expensive coal-based energy into the cheapest energy available in the world today, which is renewables. And in South Africa, we have an abundance of high-quality sun radiation and high-quality wind, plus all the minerals that are required to build the backup and some gas to back up the system. That's the future, but it's going to take us a while to transition into the lowest cost, most reliable energy system. And we are now in between an old system that's dying and a new system that is starting to get born.
And we're feeling the pain and we're suffering. Thank you very much for your time, insights and explanations this afternoon here on eNCA. Professor Mark Swilling from the National Planning Commission. He also works for Stellenbosch University's Sustainability Just Transitions Program.